Hi, Susie. Welcome to another podcast.
Hi, Mel. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to see you again. We always have such good chats.
Oh, it is great to see you again. And what we wanted to do for the viewers was um, because we both worked in a lot of different areas, but in particular, both focused on midlife and personal empowerment over the last few years. We wanted to share some of the ideas around that, but what they've in particular meant for us. So, this session is going to look at midlife in general. But I just wanted to, for viewers who maybe haven't seen any of the other videos that are on my YouTube page, and in particular, the last podcast that we did together, just to talk a little bit about how we met and what the focus was at the time.
You know, everyone who's watching, Mel sent me a video of what we'd done and what we talked about 2 years ago. And I watched it all, and it was actually really empowering to me to realize how far I'd come in the last 2 years. When I actually met Mel, I was in the UK, and I was part of the Rolf Harris court case in 2014. I was over in the UK to promote my latest book at the Mind Body Spirit Festival, and which is called 60 is the New 40, the ultimate guide to defying age, and also to be part of the publicity for a documentary, the second documentary in the UK that I'm in, that was also about Rolf Harris and the court case, and the effect that whole thing had on society. Mel and I met
Mhm.
at the Mind Body Spirit Festival in Olympia and bonded as we do when we meet people who we're energetically attracted to, which is great. And we talked about, Mel asked me lots of questions, so make sure you check out her shows because they're really good, about what I was doing. And back then, I'd just come out of a 30-year marriage, and I was finding myself again and empowering myself again. And it's a difficult thing when you come out of a long marriage. Mine was like, well, 30 years. I actually divorced him before
Mhm.
that, but had to keep living with him for like another 18 months. So I've only really been separated for two. And I then, what money I did get, I decided I'd go to the UK and spoil myself. I went for 3 weeks, everyone, and I stayed for 4 months because while I was there, Rolf Harris actually died. And
Mm.
over the years, I've become the voice of that court case. And I'm very proud and humbled to represent all the women that were part of that case, and the change we had on society. And I've been in a lot of press and podcasts, and I've been on Good Morning Britain and met some really amazingly famous people and been interviewed by them. And I'm so grateful for that. But it's interesting how those things affect your life and where you go from there when you become this
Mm.
spokesperson, for a kind of a movement without actually asking for it. Be careful what you wish
Mm.
for. And Mel and I met when I was launching my book at the Olympia at the Mind Body Spirit Festival, and I spoke there as well. And then I caught up with her at the end of my journey, and we hung out several times because I was there, like I said, for 4 months. We've always really enjoyed talking to each other. It's very important when you meet people in your life that you stay in touch because you never know what sort of friendships are coming to you. And for her to send me the video, it really reminded me of who I was back in that time, which is different to the woman I am now. I'm a more evolved version of myself. I'm more like myself that I used to be before I spent the last 10 years of a 30-year marriage in a kind of psychologically DV situation, which had a lot of control attached
Mhm.
to it, and a lot of anger from my ex-husband. And many of us go through marriages that have, or relationships that do have, anger and miscommunication attached to it. A lot of my book I wrote was kind of me coming out of the other side of that marriage. A lot of it is about communication and how we communicate with ourselves, how we communicate with others, how the words we use to ourselves, about ourselves in our heads, are so important to us moving through life, in a really positive and more empowered way. So it's we want to talk to you about things like that. It's a different time in midlife, and midlife can be anything from 45 to 65. It's this middle period And sometimes society tells us we're actually older than we feel. You still feel young, you still think young, you're still into some really cool and groovy music.
Mm.
And society kind of says, in all the advertising that we see, that women of this time, it's that we're supposed to be old and grey, and that's not true. And Mel and I are both into fitness and longevity, and really putting your really speaking to your mind in the right way and manifesting things that you need. And we're going to talk to you about a lot of stuff today, aren't we, Mel?
Yeah, thanks for that, Susie. And that's one of the key aspects that we wanted to refer to is you can get to a certain point in your life where, you know, you've been in a long marriage, as you say, you're doing a particular type of work for a few years, and then there can be one event that comes along. And it can be positive or negative, you know, different people have different events that happen to them that can send your life on a trajectory that you wasn't expecting. And as you say, we met around that point. At the same point, I think, as we were chatting offline this week, you know, I started to really think about midlife from about 2016 and whether I wanted to do the work I was going to do, if I was going to continue it in the same way. I wanted to have a better work-life balance. And so you can get to that point in your life where you've lived your life in a particular way, and then all of a sudden you are either forced to reflect on it or do it differently, and it makes you question absolutely everything. So, and because we've had these conversations around what it means to be a woman and all the themes that came up in that court case about, you know, what happens to women, the trajectory, the conditioning, past life experiences. But what we wanted to focus on for this one are some of the things that we've both noticed through our experiences of being a bit more experimental. Because I think certainly before midlife, before we're entering whatever the age that means to people, you know, it might be their 40s or 50s, you need to start thinking about what that could look like and starting to come up with a plan. And at the same time, have to be open to, if you've got more freedom, to be a bit more experimental about trying things that maybe, you know, you've had on the bucket list for a while, whether that is travel or, you know, new work or new career. So before we go into some of those sort of key aspects, I wanted to just hit a little bit about what I found. Anyone who knows me knows I like to always throw in a little bit of the research, and I focused for this on what I found around the UK because health, well-being, and ideas about midlife will be different in different cultures. We probably share some commonalities about what life is experienced like for men and women post 50, because we know
And
it
we're
can be
both in
felt.
different countries. We have to add that as well. We're in different countries. So I'm in
Yeah,
Australia and
yeah.
Mel's in England. And there's similarities, but there is also differences.
Exactly. So what we're sharing in terms of the information is the sort of general trends that we're both seeing in our respective countries and some of those that emerge through the US. But we know that it's a transformative period, it's a psychological stage. A lot of people are aware of Carl Jung's life stages and sort of archetypes that emerge through his work, that you get to this point in your life when your children are grown up or you've had a long career, and you start to really think about where are you at, what's going on, and you need to do a bit of a life review. It's also for a lot of people now, maybe not so much 10 or 20 years ago, if you look at some of the classic movies about what it meant to be a woman in Educating Rita and other films that sort of epitomize life, depending on the classes and the culture that you grown up in as to what you might expect going further down the line. Um, but a lot of the information that's come through, I've certainly seen, and you were a part of that last year when you was in the UK as well, Susie, is you know, all the different aspects about menopause, about health, well-being, fitness, you know, nutrition that we need to consider, attitude and mindset. But what I wanted to sort of emphasize really is the key aspect in a lot of my work is around mental health. And a lot of the research has been done on how we increase our life satisfaction and upper trajectory. And we know that in the field, if you don't start to think about these aspects of life, and put a plan in place, and you're more prone to depression and anxiety, or had any past psychological distress, or going through any changes without the support mechanisms in place, it can be an incredibly tough time. So often, as you said a minute ago, in society, we place this sort of negative lens in which to look through about what it means as you get older, in terms of being in a job that you don't like, or starting to look at your pension, you've got less years left on the planet. And that can really affect some people. And, you see some of that data emerging through our mental health services. But I'm not going to go too much into research. I have got another video on my YouTube page on midlife, where I look more at the research and the shifts and changes we've seen in careers, and the kind of things that people need to think about. I wanted to make this more personal about the experiences that Susie and I have looked at, and what's changed and grown from our work. So before we go a bit further about some of those reflections, I'm just going to share a little bit about some of the work I've got and some of the work that Susie's got that you can access, which will be in the links below the video. I've got a Change, Grow and Transform video series on YouTube. So there's sort of a 5-minute video every day with some journal prompts that you can think about, because it helps you ask some deeper questions and come up with some ideas and help you towards making a plan. I also looked at the Great Awakening, which is looking at the sort of global evolution of consciousness and what makes us question who we are, our roles, the changes in society, which is probably, more akin to what you talked about in the last video that we did, Susie, because that was such a massive shift in society as well that was going on at that time. And sometimes it takes something as horrendous as what come out of that court case, and the experiences of a lot of women at that time, and the Me Too movement and everything that sort of that connected to, was a large scale social shift and change and evolution about the rights of people, in particular the rights of women.
You're so right.
1
Absolutely.
second.
While you're talking there, yeah.
Sorry, 1 sec. I'll edit this bit. Okay, so that's the videos that you can connect with, and if you want to contact me privately, there'll be a link on my YouTube page. But Susie, just to let everybody know, I know you've talked about the book that you've got, if you want to share the title again. And I believe you've got a program as well of a course that people will be
I
able to
do.
access in a few weeks.
I do. I based my course on my book, which is called 60 is the New 40, The Ultimate Guide to Aging. And it's about, I really believe that when we get to midlife, we need to kind of reset ourselves. We get here and, Mel was talking about reflections that we have on our life. We're in a habit of living a particular way, doing particular things. So my book is about helping to thrive and renew in midlife, and that's what it's called. And Mel will pop the links up for you. I have a couple of free ebooks to send you. The first one is called Joyful Wrinkles. In this day and age, people think that wrinkles are bad. I'm dead against the word anti-aging, because it denotes that there's something wrong with aging. I'm going to be 63 next month. I feel fabulous. I also feel like I'm in my sexual prime, which is great. We'll talk about that another time. But when you're in midlife, you've lived a lot, you've done a lot of things, and you need to celebrate. And Mel and I want to teach you and talk to you about celebrating. I also am a coach as well. Not like Mel is. She's fabulous. She's a fabulous coach. I like to talk to you about confidence. I help women with confidence, and I also help you as a guide, really, how to be really good on camera, because that's one of the things I thrive at. I teach you how to, just how to do your own videos, how to find your story, how to tell your story. Because a lot of what I've done in the last few years has been about telling my story. And coming forward in the Royal Paris case was about finding my voice and telling my story. So as a confidence coach, I help you find your voice and tell your story. And Thrive and Renew, my course, which is going to be released soon, is available at ageisjustanumber.com.au, because that's my favourite saying, age is just a number. Don't let anybody tell you that your age number, you can't do something with it. So,
That's
in the
true.
next however long, Mel and I are going to talk to you on this and many other things too that we're going to show you. It's about teaching you how to thrive and renew your life in midlife, and how to be the best version of yourself that you can be. And not having
Brilliant.
the generational mindset that we're all programmed with. Like you mentioned, educating Rita and some of the ways that our
Mm,
mothers and our grandmothers live that have been passed on to us, and we're kind of indoctrinated in them. And we have to
mm,
like really, really think about ourselves and look at who we are and what do I think about that and how do I feel about that. And
mm,
midlife, ladies and gentlemen, is the time that we reflect. So if you have any baggage that you've been dragging along with you since your youth, now is the time that if you haven't dealt with it or haven't looked at it, it's going to come and slap you in the face. That's something that midlife actually does with the
yeah.
hormonal changes that we all go through. Women go through menopause and through hormonal changes, as do men. Men get, men's bodies change. Men have a depletion of testosterone. This is the midlife for humans. We change, and we need to learn to grow and thrive through this period of life. And a lot of it's quite
Mm.
introspective.
So I think that point that you made, regardless of where someone's on the journey, which is why I like to introduce people to different materials, um, of, whether it's your book, whether it's they watch some of my videos, whether it is doing your course, is that people are at different phases of that journey, and whether or not they've actually thought about it as, I'd started to think about it more sort of 2016, and that was in line with career energy, what you can do, what you've got going on in your life, whether you've got kids or not, if they're grown up, they're adult children, they living at home, and the flexibility and the freedom that you'll have with that, as well as the vision. So looking at, and starting to think about that and having a life review, and either using some tools, some coaching questions or journal questions to get you to start thinking about that can be a really good start. Reading like the information in your book, or exploring videos, listening to podcasts, can really start to get other ideas going. And in particular, things that you might be quite concerned about, but also starting to think about how it opens up opportunities for growth and expansion in ways that maybe you've not previously thought about, because of the conditioning that we might have received when we're growing up from our parents and other people around us. So that's kind of where reading books, listening to podcasts, doing some journaling, doing courses can really help people. And for some people, they want to take that further and get support from men and women of the same age group, and can dive into a life coaching experience and delve into that on a deeper level, and also find out which aspects of midlife they might in particular be struggling with. But in terms of, so, and we were talking more about this the other day in my journey, that, like I said to you earlier, initially I was sort of thinking around 2016, what, did I want to do that job? Did I want to carry on? I didn't want to, I was totally focused really at that time of just working less days a week. And back then, nobody really worked from home, and there wasn't really the facility. Nobody was doing online meetings like, everything blew up in 2020. So you kind of only know what you know, and you only do what you do with the information or the experience that you've got. And it was really about looking at what's possible, or what it was that I might want to increase in terms of satisfaction and happiness. So initially for me, that was just about getting on the road and going to visit my son when he was in uni, and starting to visit nice places, and starting to do less time at work and open up more hobbies and activities. And sometimes that in itself can be an activity in itself, to do some questionnaires to find out, is there something around meaning and purpose? What do you desire? What brings you joy? What gives you some happiness? And if you're ending a relationship and your kids have grown up, you've also got to combine that, like what you were saying, with that grief and loss of the role of that you had, and the meaning that all that had in your life. So it can be a sort of process of experiencing more joy, but also experiencing more grief, and it's a real balance to be able to do the two. But when we were talking the other night, was having a look at kind of once you've done a bit of that life review, and once you've sat back and thought, okay, this is where I'm going to focus my energy and attention, as you were doing writing the book, you were getting speaking gigs, you were traveling more, and it was to do with the case, but it was also to do with what you were creating. I found as I got into sort of 2023, I wanted to get out more, teach yoga, go to festivals, travel more, get outside, as a lot of people did after the COVID years. And that can be an experimental phase. So, not many people talk about you have a plan, but it's not a plan that's fixed in stone for the next 10 or 20 years. It's sometimes we come up with ideas and then we go and do some of those things and we see what that experience was like. Was it a one-off experience, or was it something that, we want to do a lot more of? And you start to feel what brings you a lot more joy and satisfaction, as well as what else you've got to navigate. Those old relationships, your personality is changing. People see you changing. That can have an effect on people around you. So part of what we were talking about the other day was this process of letting go, purging, grieving the old self, clearing out the closet. So even though, Susie, like your activities have increased and you've been working on the book and on the course and having these speaking gigs, both of us were also recognized. It's also about letting go, doing some really practical things like clearing out the closets, letting go of old clothes, old ornaments, thinking about whether you want to live there anymore. Um, and how we start to also distance ourselves from people that drain us, that don't bring us joy, or moving out, as you said, in your relationship, of toxic relationships, and that emotional purging that goes on. And I think that's a part of what we call a midlife crisis. I think it's all kind of tied in, and people don't realize it's a process. It isn't necessarily that you just, when you feel like that and you land there, that you're going to stay there. Does that make sense? Because we were kind of talking about this a bit the other night, weren't we?
You just said the words midlife crisis, and straight away I just thought, yes, that's quite possibly what I was going through. It was a midlife crisis with everything that
Mm,
you've just talked about. I never thought about that before, that particular term. I got to a stage in my life where I was not fulfilled in my everyday, day to day. I was not emotionally
mm,
happy. I was not physically happy. I was not happy with my relationship. The old dream of wanting to walk along the beach when we were older, hand in hand, was abhorrent to me. We'd grown
uh,
apart, we'd stopped speaking each other's love language. And I just thought, I plan on living till, I want to get to 110. I think that we're programmed to believe, oh, retirement's coming up. Like in
yeah,
Australia, retirement is 67. I'm nowhere near
yeah.
retiring. But that word retirement denotes old age. Let
Mm,
go, you're going to let go. Don't bother about exercising anymore. Don't worry about colouring your hair anymore. Just let all your greys come through. In this day and age, ladies and gentlemen, we're living so much longer because we're so much
mm,
more aware of diet and exercise in particular, and spirituality and mindset. We're so
mm,
much more connected than our mothers and fathers and grandparents used to be with our whole self. So I need, and I think we become habituated. We're in a habit.
yeah,
We're in a
yeah,
habit
yeah.
of how we live, how we move through our day
Mm,
to day life, what we do, and we have to make this favorite saying of mine: nothing changes if nothing changes. So if you don't change anything in your life, from just how you think about your life and how you think about things and how you think about your day to day, if you don't change that, then you won't change anything. Mel and I were talking earlier. If you have a look at the people around you who you associate with the most, are they negative?
mm,
Are they the people that have got one foot inside the grave because they're over 50? Are they always bitching and moaning about their life and how bad it is? And oh, when I retire, I'm going to do this. Well, it's just an age. It means absolutely nothing. Uh, if you surround you, if you've got I was listening to this thing yesterday, if you have 9 depressive, negative, pessimistic people around you, you will become the 10th.
mm,
So culling friends to and dropping them to the acquaintance level if they are
mm,
negative, And if they are pessimistic, it's really good for you. Try and bring more positivity to your life, which will help uplift you, and that's so important.
Yeah.
And thinking about what do you want in life. I think a lot of people they're living the same life. It's like that movie with Bill Murray, Groundhog Day. You get up and do the same stuff every day. And that term, then both Mel and I have got, older children. Mine's 23, a bit younger than yours. And we live in the same house with them still, both of us. And that's an interesting experience. And we're doing that as parents a lot, where our kids are
Mhm.
living with us for longer. I moved out of home when I was 18. A lot of us of our era moved out of
Mm.
home longer. We couldn't wait to get free. We've made the environment at home much more conducive to them staying with us longer, which is also something that we have to deal with. The term empty nester. I always thought that was really weird. And then people that, oh, I'm so sad, my kids have moved out of home. But it's because they have to revisit their relationship with their spouse because they've had
Yeah.
this buffer child or children in between it, and they've always been doing stuff with them. All of a sudden, they're gone. And the empty nest part it really has got nothing to do with the kids. It's got to do with you. And maybe
Yeah.
you feel empty now because you don't have anything to talk about with your spouse. And then that forces you to start thinking about, oh, God, we've got nothing to talk about anymore. Have we grown apart? And kids were actually the things that were holding us together. What do I want to do in life? A
Mm.
lot of women, if in good health, will live till their mid to late 90s. My great aunts certainly did. So, two generations on, we've got a really good shot of getting to 100 pretty easily. So at 50, you're only halfway there. If you think
Mm.
about it like that, you've got another 50 years ahead of you. What are you going to do with it? Don't think
Yeah.
about retiring. What are you going to do? Start thinking about, who am I? What do I want to do with my life? And there's so much you can do that doesn't actually cost money. We have this amazing thing now where we can learn and grow and do courses for nothing. You can sit at home and you can learn from people and you can watch things and you can exercise and you can do courses and you can become qualified in so many things. So it's about breaking
Yeah.
that life habit, isn't it? People are in a habit of doing the day to day. I'm
I
about
think
to
that's
become
what
not an empty nester, but I'm going to cut the cord in a few months. I can't wait. I'm really excited. When I divorced my husband, I wasn't ready to divorce our child. I hadn't finished raising him yet,
mm, mm,
um, but I have now. And I've lived with him for the last 2 years with him and his girlfriend. And I thought last December we were only given a 6-month lease, and I said to my son, "This means they're probably going to sell the house, so we should start getting rid of the stuff that we have that we don't need
mm.
anymore." So I've been culling things that I don't need. Like, I really don't need the Thomas the Tank Engine and the tracks that I've saved since he was 3. I don't need those anymore. He doesn't want them. So, and all those clothes that I've been hanging on to. As women, we always have at least 3 different sizes. I know you're sitting there nodding. We have the small clothes that we wish that we're going to get back into, and we keep hanging on to them. And then we have the bigger clothes when we're having chubby days because, I've eaten too much chocolate and winter's come and we've been comfort eating. And then we have the middle of the road clothes that we keep going back to from, actually threw out the pair of size 11 shorts. Thought, you're never going to get there again, love. They're just taking up space. Give them to someone else to love.
I think
So,
what I picked up from a couple of things that you were saying there, though, is two aspects of people. Groundhog Day, people can live in a homeostasis, easily become stagnant and not see or know on some level, even if it's a small level, that the relationship isn't great or there's problem there. And those problems can be masked by always being busy, always having lots going on, being in a full-time job, raising your kids, all of that. And the other aspect that's really come clear in my client work is there's a lot of people also that die in their 50s, that and they're losing people. And in a way, it's we just really don't know whether or not, we're going to be here at the end of the year, at the end of the week, or anything. And so if years ago it would be, I think as a woman in particular, it was much harder to leave relationships, leave children as they grow up. And so much psychology was around, and the conditioning was around being at home, bringing up your kids. And lots of people didn't, they waited until the kids were going to uni before they split. And I'm still seeing that. I think that's still a fairly normal situation. And there is no right or wrong unless the toxicity is so great that it, you know, it's really damaging to the people in that. But those are the sort of three areas I notice is people who sort of tick along in Groundhog Day, doing the same thing over and over until they get to their 50s and not really thought about it, and it can become as a shock. Or they have a health scare, or their partner has a health scare, like a serious one, and then all of a sudden that shakes us up. And in a way, something that I've come to think about a lot more over this year is sometimes when things come and shake us up or chaos is thrown in, we can often want to avoid chaos because we're like, oh my God, there's a challenge. And but actually it is, if you look back, like you said, what happened to you. And if I look back, you know, my biggest sort of shift was when I had my car accident in 2019, because sometimes you just think that's it, time's over, you're done in life. And a calling can be small, but I kind of believe on a sort of spiritual level, if we can get the nudges, we can get that icky feeling, we can get that level of dissatisfaction. We can even be sat there thinking, I don't know if I really want this, but I don't know what I want instead. But it is a time when you start having, I look at things on a gradient, you know, if it's a little nudge and it's a feeling and it's a slight something that comes to you time to time, sometimes they don't capture your attention enough. We're so busy doing other things. And that's why now I really encourage people to do mindfulness and meditation, because sometimes that really does connect you with yourself. Otherwise, as you rightly said, that empty nest syndrome isn't necessarily it's the nest that's empty, is it the person can be empty. And it's like now can be quite a scary place to go there. And I think that's a lot to do with why people really drop into an abyss sometimes with their own mental health and start to feel and sadly in some cases incredibly suicidal because they can't see a life ahead of them. And if anything, if anyone's listening to, you know, this part is, this is where I'm really passionate about, because, you know, both of us have had really challenging times in our lives. You know, we've had moments of depression. I've had, you know, for me, anxiety and depression are different, where something can hit you so hard, you don't know if you're going to get back out of bed and be able to face the world again or even want to. And to do that and have the courage to face your fears or to get out and just do it anyway can feel like incredibly challenging. And there are people around there in their 50s who feel like once the marriage is dissolved, kids have grown up, that's it. They can't think beyond that. And I want to talk to those people as well about what's possible, because I certainly know, and I'm writing a lot more about my own experience down now. I certainly know that the way I was looking back at my life of, actually I was thinking, what's the common theme? And I thought, these things have come along and I've reinvented myself each time, you know. And I think sometimes it comes along and it's really challenging and you can question absolutely everything, and you can drop into that abyss and that depression and that hopelessness and despair, which is a horrible place to get to and not see. And I remember something stuck out to me when we spoke quite a while ago, that you created an oasis in your bedroom. And then you said to me recently, you've realized that actually maybe you have to do a significant move because you're so psychologically geared towards going back to that small part of you in your life, that actually there comes a time where you don't fit that anymore. And that was what really struck me in the conversation that we had the other day, that even though these things happen to you, there are still some aspects of your psyche that need to move beyond that smaller self that you were when you were in all of those relationships. So even though massive things have taken place, your psyche is now looking at those things and going, hang on a minute, just as you were talking then about, you know, you had a conversation with your son, it's time to sell the house. That's the much bigger aspect of this as well, isn't it?
Oh, totally. I in the home that I was living in with my ex-husband and my son for over 20 years, I didn't sleep with my husband. I had my own room, my own bathroom. I That was my oasis. I lived there. I worked there. You know, you're talking about, you know, monumental changes and things that happen in our lives. 2020, the whole world got a huge shake-up.
Mm.
And many people survived and many didn't from COVID. And that really forced so many of us to change. I lost 2 careers in 1 week.
Yeah.
I lost my career as a hair and makeup artist, so my faces were taken away. And as a motivational speaker and an MC, my stages were taken away all at once. And that was a huge shock. And many people either thrived or did not from that period, you know.
Mm.
And that really forced people to really take a look at their lives. A lot of marriages didn't survive, or partnerships did not survive that period because they were stuck together, and they realized they
Mm.
didn't actually have anything in common after all. And you know, there was a lot of bad about that, but there was also, from a human point of view, it was good to have that kind of shake up in hindsight, that part of it, as far as to
Mm.
have to look internally and look at ourselves and what do I want and what am I doing, and I'm going to have to do something else. I became a carer, which you know, I've only just finished doing, and that was really good. But my bedroom, I spent all my time in my bedroom. That was my oasis. My husband could rant and rave downstairs, and I'd have my own special place to go. And in the house that I'm living in now, that I've been in for 2 years with my son, I spend all my time in my bedroom. I don't actually come out in the lounge room and watch TV with them. I do it all in my bedroom. I still have that programming. I started. I have met a friend who does house sitting, and travels to some really lovely houses. And I got to go and stay with him in these houses. And straight away, I was in the lounge room watching TV. I was having dinner at a dining table, things that I had not done in my marriage. All of a sudden,
Mm.
this reprogramming, or not reprogramming, it was actually more, it was like having an entirely different life outside of a bedroom, which had become my oasis and I guess my safe place. And I just transferred it to this house. And it's quite a thing, really, you know, to get out of your bedroom. And it really is a psychological thing, the safe place that I've been in for decades. But to go to other people's homes and actually, this is not really the right term to put it, live like a normal person, has expanded my mind just in the last 6 months, just in the last 5 or 6 months, to be able to go and spend time at different places and
Mm.
actually live life in an entirely different way to what I've been doing for such a long time. I had a taste of it when I went to the UK 2 years ago, and I got to spend time in my cousin's house. She was
Mm.
I got her. She had a 3 bedroom house that she was getting ready to rent out. And when I'd been in my bedroom, my own bedroom, I'd visualized spending time in a little kitchen with a round table and a view looking out over a garden and having my own space that was clean and tidy. And I got that in my cousin's place. And it was such a sense of freedom and of like nurturing myself, and to actually expand where I lived inside a house. And really let myself go outside of the bedroom and, like, you know, live like other people lived and eat at a table, not in my bed. It's been extraordinary, which is also why I stayed for the 4 months that I did, because I had this freedom, and it was like I was
Yeah.
reprogramming myself, like
Yeah.
literally reprogramming myself
Yeah.
after my marriage. And it's an extraordinary thing. It takes a lot of effort, everyone, to recognize it, to remove yourself from a situation that can be toxic like a marriage. It's not as scary as you might think, though it is scary and it is a really big deal. One of the biggest things I did when I was actually in my marriage, my girlfriend said to me, "You have to open your own bank account." And I was like, "Oh, that's pretty big. I don't know." But I did it. And it was kind of the scariest thing that I did when I was actually in my marriage in the last 10 years, was open my own bank account, that was mine at the end of, you know, our relationship. And I walked out of the bank, and it was nerve wracking, and incredibly empowering at the same time, that I'd taken one
Mm.
tiny little step. It's not really a big deal, but it actually is, to preserve myself and to move forward as me. and having this experience of house sitting in other people's houses and seeing
Mm.
how other people live, and expanding my myself of how I live has been really good. So it's like preparing me for cutting the cord, and I'm really,
Yeah.
really looking forward to having my own place and my own stuff, and not living in the same way that I've lived. And I've wondered in the past if I've been living like this because I'm still with my son, even though we get on really well and have an amazing relationship and there's nothing holding me back. However, he's 23, and there's other kids that
Mm.
come over, and it's like there's that
But
level of
sometimes,
uncomfortability that I don't feel.
yeah, but sometimes, like you said, you can grow and expand, but there can still be levels of sense of safety that we have because the conditioning's so strong, and those dynamics in the
And
household,
it
in the
takes
relationships that
time.
you've got, it takes time and it's a process. And I think some things can happen quick, but the key aspect out of that, and I think what we were talking about the other night about that, it's starting to experience new things. So whether that is traveling to a new country or house sitting or doing a new course or going somewhere. But I've certainly find, and I used to say this to clients that I worked with, going away for a week is never enough. 2 weeks is barely just time for your body to start relaxing. If you can do something for at least a month and go somewhere completely different, you remove yourself out the context, out the dynamics, out the energetic essence of that. And you're able to literally pull your energy back into yourself, focus on yourself, and be selfish so that you start to experience when you want to wake up and go to sleep, what you want to eat and when you want to not eat. Who you want to hang out with and not hang out with, and what you do. And that process, like you said, of visualizing, seeing yourself around a table is also that your mind your mind can take you to different places when you start to make those changes. It can either go into fear of, oh my God, that's going to happen. And then that can create resistance and make it harder for us to take that step when we're ready. But it can also, these little experiences can help us get used to. It's like a little bit further on in our development. Or it can take us to this sense of wonder, of, oh, that's interesting. Like where you were talking about the house sitting. And I remember doing that. I think I did that around 2016, 17. And it just gave me an opportunity because I love the sea. So it just gave me an opportunity to be by the sea more, but go to people's houses and see how they lived. But there's a real psychological effect that happens to us on those levels. And now, once you've, because I kind of want to put it into a bit of a stage for people, once you've started to become aware that you might need to think about what life could look like and where you are right now, and then you start to create a plan, and then you start to have some experiences, you then need to review kind of what that experience was like, what that gave you, what you learned from that, what you liked about it, what you didn't like. So you start to sift and sort which ones you're going to keep, like with the clothes, and which ones you're going to give away and not hang on to. Same with friendships, same with eating, same with absolutely everything. So none of these things happens overnight. It's a sort of evolution over, I think, a good few years till you get to that point of realizing actually there's some maybe other things that you need to sort out completely. But then there's another place that can start, and this is where I wanted to go into the tools. So both of us use a variety of tools that I think sometimes they're natural, sometimes it's just the way you're built, it's the way you've come to be. So you've talked about communication and what's possible and how you can work with the people that you come into contact with. And sometimes we learn that through the really bad relationship we've had because we haven't been able to communicate. We've been stonewalled and we've not been able to get anywhere, or we've had to deal with the rage and anger of other people around us. Um, but that process of really starting to connect with what you liked about something and creating a visual plan, not just about what you can manifest in terms of like, whether we call that law of attraction, but it's really starting to think about our preferences, what lights us up, what makes us feel good, what do we feel drawn towards. So when I'm working with clients, I'm getting them to think about it in terms of their body experiencing that, because our mind can get in the way. Our mind can elicit our fears, it can fill in the blanks, or the old patterns of what stopped us in the past can come back. And that's where often people need either psychological support, coaching, or group work to keep them on track rather than their mind keep taking them backwards. But it's also about how the body experiences those changes. And does it make you feel lighter and more expansive? Do you feel like going, oh, and there's a sense of wonder, curiosity, and excitement about that? And if so, that's like an indicator to do more. And you then play around with those ideas, that guided visualization, that lay there dreaming about those things. And then you can start to expand it even further. Like, I wonder if, what would it look like if? And that's where our conversation kind of got the other night, wasn't it? Is we've been utilizing these processes in our personal life and in our professional life, and then you get to, okay, I've been dabbling with this and dabbling with that, and that felt good and I'd like to do more, or no, that's not so great, but actually I wonder how my mind can expand, like what you said. You wanted to go back and do some more work on TV. You'd been practicing these different experiences that you'd had, built up your confidence and self-esteem, which a lot of people have to revisit, especially when they get in their 50s, because we're redefining every aspect of ourselves, how we look, our shape, our hair, our mindset, absolutely everything. And then you go, okay, I'd like to taste more of that. I'd like to have more of those experiences. How can I find people that I can resonate with that also have those conversations and those experiences? And how can I get more of that, whether that's more travel, more courses, and as you know, on my YouTube page, I've got my camper van adventures, because that was one of the things I'd thought about for a while. I never saw myself doing it at the time, but then the reality of me being able to do that and start to have those experiences has taught me a lot about all sorts of different things around being by myself, having mindful moments, having complete stillness, having time to reflect, turning off the noise, not having the distractions, meeting new people. And that's what I realized actually, is that when you go out with that sense of wonder and that curiosity, is everywhere I went, the only thing I knew was maybe where I was going to park up. I didn't always know how long I was going to stay there. And I would come across people and have the most amazing conversations. And each experience can be a new seed of thought, a nugget. And the more, and I think this bit is what you've been doing a lot of, Susie, is the more that you have these day-to-day moment encounters, even if some of them trigger you and wind you up, that's just information for us to go, oh, okay, there's a little crevice that I need to pay attention to. I must go and visit that with my friend or therapist, whatever. But it's the other stuff, because it's not always going to be love, light, and rainbows. It's going to be the shadow. It's going to be the mucky stuff and the other stuff as well. But the more we experience that, the more it moves us out of what were the toxic patterns, the toxic people, the homeostasis, the status quo. It helps. It's almost like, I think sometimes we need to, it's almost like a gravitational pull now towards a life that can unfold, which you're kind of doing with a level of uncertainty. But you have to start figuring out what you like, what you don't like, and what you'd like more of. Kind of like, as you were saying, the different experiences you've had.
Oh, so you've made so many good points, so many good points there. I think the one thing is that we can't do this life alone.
Mm,
We learn off other people, and that helps us grow. And like you said, some things can be triggering and some things not. Joining some, uh, like we met each other and we're immediately drawn to each other. We've had the most amazing conversations and still do. And we both learn and grow off each other all the
yeah,
time. I
yeah,
think a lot of people they're in this midlife stage and they're a little bit alone and they're very
yeah,
insular with their spouse. And when they realize that maybe they don't have the same level of communication that they used to have with their spouse, they really start questioning their life and where they're going. And that's what we suggest that you do. I in the last I actually know what it's like to live in that proverbial dark tunnel and live in a life without hope. There wasn't any hope. in my life. There was no light at the end of the tunnel for many
That's
years.
horrible, that is.
And it was a horrible place to be in. It was really,
Mm,
it was sad and it was dark and it was depressing. And I'd wake up with tears in my eyes, and I'd go walking every day, and I started listening to motivational speakers to really, pick myself up and learn more about myself. And as we're doing that and we're learning from other people and connecting with other people or connecting with groups, we're allowing ourselves to be open to learn and open to change. And that's so
mm,
important, and that's what, when I eventually, got free, and divorced my husband, or eventually stopped living together, it took months of living in another place to actually relax and feel peace for the first time in a really long time. Like you mentioned, having other people around us that are angry, and it's their anger and their frustrations with themselves. And often in marriages, we take it out on the person nearest and dearest to us, either without realizing or not caring. And
yeah.
after a while, I was the recipient of a lot of that. I started having physical manifestations. So my oasis in my bedroom was the only place I could get away from it. But I was still in this life with no hope. So by taking charge of my life and my feelings and listening to
Mm,
like Les Brown and major international speakers, and they're so up and vibrant, and I'd walk and I'd listen every single day
mm,
while I was taking my dog for a walk to change my mindset. For ages there on my mirror, I had written, "I am enough," and every time I was in my bathroom, I was enough, and I really started practicing. I am enough. I'm always enough. In my marriage, I was never enough. Didn't really matter what I did. It was never good enough. Which is not true, because that was not my experience. That was my husband's experience of how he felt about himself that he was pushing
mm.
onto me. And that's
Projected
what
onto
happens in
you.
marriages. We have to learn to love ourselves. The one thing I realized in my marriage, a while ago, is that I loved him more than I loved me. And I used to say to him, you
Mm,
haven't reached your full potential yet. And then one day the penny dropped. Actually, you have. I haven't reached my full potential. Do I want to get to 70 and to still be here? Because I'm really unhappy, and I'm really not. I feel like I have so much more in me to give to myself and to others.
mm,
And I'm a naturally joyous person. Where's my joy? Where's my
mm,
curiosity in life gone? So to actually move and make the big decision to have a divorce and come out of it, and then go to the UK to experience like peace, and calmness, and living by myself, and being able to do, like you said, whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, and get
I
up at
remember you
whatever
telling me
time.
that,
It's
that was
that
really
feeling
striking at
peace,
that time. Yeah,
absolutely amazing. And actually, the first time I ever felt peace was when I was in UK, and freedom was when I was in the UK in
yeah.
2014 for that court case that I'd been flown over, and I stood outside the hotel room in London, and I was like, I, I was free. And I had this amazing feeling of freedom and of peace that came over me, because I was such a long way away from my husband and his anger.
Mm,
And it was amazing to feel free. I had my girlfriend with me, not at that time, but she was with me over there. I could do what I wanted, when I wanted, with whomever I wanted. I didn't have any judgment right next to me. I had judgment on the phone all the time, but I had nothing next to me. And it was the beginning of my healing journey to find
mm,
myself. And it took a little while. And even moving here to experience calm and peacefulness. So if you're in a relationship where you've got someone that's antagonistic and angry, you owe it to yourself to put yourself first and to love you more than you love anybody else. Because unless you love yourself and start experiencing the things that you
mm,
want in your life and putting yourself outside your comfort zone, you're
mm,
not going to reach your full potential either. And you won't be, when you do have that peace and do have that calmness, it also gives you want to be curious about life. You start joining groups online and experiencing other women and other men. For me, I really like to experience women. I've made it this year. I'm connecting with as many women as possible in these
mm,
a couple of groups that I'm in. When I was in England, I made sure that I caught up with as many people that I knew as possible, that I'd known with as friends online, so I could hug them
mm,
in person, which was amazing. And that just builds on the friendship. So don't do it by yourself. Reach out.
We
And
need
it's
those
always great.
connections.
Well,
Yeah.
we do. It's so important, you know. And when you reach out to people who maybe have lived a similar life to yours, or who have experience that they want to share with you,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is called tribing. This is what we do. This is what they do in tribes. The elders pass on their knowledge to the younger people to make their transition through life easier for them to actually cope with and understand. What you did, Mel, with van life, you had you needed to get out. You took a leap of faith. You got yourself a van, and you jumped in the van and you started driving around the UK and having adventures, you know. And you've spoken about like parking next to the ocean and waking up next to the ocean in the morning are free and peaceful,
Mm.
and really finding yourself and meditatively working out who you are and what you want to do and whether you were happy with your life. And not everybody can do this, but there's a great example. Mel's an amazing example of just getting in the car and driving away, and seeing what the world's going to bring you. And like, she didn't know where she was going. I didn't know what I was going to do in the UK. I only came
Yeah.
home and started missing my dog, to be honest. And I realized that I could be doing the same things at home, and I missed my son, that I was doing over there. And uh, but I took the opportunity. So you get to this stage in life where you've just got to trust yourself. It's about trusting your instincts. Like Mel said, sometimes, you know, you have these things that you're going to do and it sounds a little bit scary. Just do it anyway. You
Mm.
know, give it a go. Do small things. You know, if you're not out of the house, go and join a dance club. Go and do something interesting that you might have really wanted to do, or a painting class, or just something, and take yourself outside of that comfort zone and be an individual, and start meeting other women who are individuals and doing things
Mm.
that make them happy, and, you know, expand your circle. When you expand your circle of people, you expand the information that you're going to
Mm.
actually talk
Mm.
about and receive. You're going to feel like a different person because there's going to be a lot of other people that are really interested in what you have to say. Sometimes when
Yeah.
we're in relationships for a long time, our partner doesn't care, not interested,
Mm.
heard it all before, don't care how you feel, because you're locked in this pattern and this habitual pattern of behavior. Sometimes in our relationships, if one person speaks to the other in a particular way, for a while, it becomes a habit. And habits are
Yeah.
really hard to break, as we know. So when you're being spoken to in a habitually bad way, it's very hard to actually change the other person and change how you feel about yourself.
Mm.
So always remember, you know, that you are enough, and that you've got a lot going for you, but you can't do it by yourself. Go out and take the bull by the horns. Find that joy and curiosity that you had when you were younger, and the fearlessness that we had when we were teenagers. You know, we'd go out and we'd do stuff because we could. You know, and then adulthood, you know, kind of hits us in the face somewhere in our mid 20s, and we're all of a sudden, oh God, life is pretty heavy. And then we go through that until kind of we get to midlife, and it's like, oh, I need to make changes because I want this next act, as Jane Fonda calls it. This is like our third act or our second act. I want it to be
Mm.
better than the first. I want to utilize on, you know, and capitalize on all the stuff I've learned, so I can
Mm.
really build on myself, so I can be the best person that I want to be for myself, for my partner, for my kids, for my friends, you know. Mel was saying, you know, sometimes these things pop into your mind. I was watching a thing about Oprah, and I've spoken about this before. There's like the whispers from the universe or from God, whatever you want to call it. We get these little ideas in our head, and sometimes they're like way out of left field, and you just think, oh, goodness, I couldn't do that. That's not me. I couldn't do that. But sometimes you'll keep receiving the same sort of idea, and you've really got to look at it,
Mm.
because
Pay
it's
attention to
actually
it.
God, the universe, is telling you, you got to do this, because when you do this, your whole life path is going to go into the path that you're supposed to be on.
And
So you got to
actually,
trust your intuition.
yeah, that is a really good point, actually, because There's kind of three things within everything you said now, because it really depends on where someone is at. It's sometimes like what you said when you came to the UK and you had all that time on your own and you felt peace for the first time. And I've had, peace on and off over the years, but I remember going out in the van and having complete stillness and peace is when you get into a really relaxed state, especially if you've been in a toxic relationship where you are in fight and flight a lot and you're on edge and you're worried about walking on eggshells and all that other stuff that goes on, is when your nervous system starts to relax and you start to get in a really good sense of peace. You can notice much quicker when that peace has been disturbed through either an interaction or someone else's energy. And then the second
Okay.
part of that is you need to do a bit of that unless you were a total loner already. And then, like you said, start to find people that share things that maybe you'd like to know more about. So I've been doing 5-day challenges, I've been doing coaching groups. And also, when I was offering coaching groups, I started doing it with women. I've done it over the years, but the key, I did 2 groups about 2 years ago, and one was directly aimed at women who'd experienced domestic abuse and were leaving or had left their relationships. And what I noticed in that is, you get women who are at all phases of their awareness and what they were able to do. But it was that bond of them listening to each other's stories, as well as sharing with each other the little things that they did that made a massive difference, that as practitioners, we wouldn't really have been able to suggest, because there was one lady that had really bad social anxiety and she could only go to one shopping centre. I know she'd always wanted to go to the next town to where they'd built this new shopping centre. And for whatever reason, I think it was to do because her partner always just really crashed into how she looked, what she wore. You shouldn't wear this, shouldn't, and that had gone on for years. And so slowly a confidence started to build up. And so everyone in the group were like kind of sharing the things that they did. And without us saying to her, right, that's the next goal on your list, go to shopping. She just decided, she just got the energy from the group, that positivity and that support and that morale, and just went and did it. And that was her quick win. And we all need a quick win sometimes that inspires us to have more hope to go and do that thing more. And sometimes we'll have a taste of that in different groups, because when the women came on our group, and this is what a lot of people don't realize with coaching programs, is they weren't even confident joining a group. They weren't confident having the camera on. And so we'd been doing it a long time. We used to give them permission to keep the camera off for a bit, and then they would join in and do more. And that was such a huge step for them to get to that point. Whereas me and you've done way more in front of the camera than I have. I've been mostly used to Zooms since, like, what was it? We started going on Zoom 2020. And that's been me in front of the camera. And even that, I remember having some anxiety and nervousness about. And that you can have that, you can face those challenges because that's part of that growth. But you're right as well. We have sometimes this echo, this voice, this idea that comes to us on and off. Because I remember I've had different levels of spiritual guidance over the years as well. And I remember chatting to this guy I was getting some spiritual coaching from. And I said to him, sometimes you get told so much information, and I take in so much information on a day-to-day basis. I said, what happens if I forget that? And he said, whatever you're meant to know, you'll always be reminded of. It will always come back in your mind.
Yeah.
And when you get to that point of, there isn't just necessarily one timeline, because every decision can change the trajectory of your life. But it's about being able to realize that you can become empowered again, that you can become your own person, that learning how to be selfish is important, learning how to put your own needs first is important. And this idea of self-care is very new in the realm of like psychology and spirituality. It's become a thing over the last 5 years because most people were conditioned to give, to sacrifice their joy and happiness for other people, to bring up their children, to be in miserable marriages, to put up with X, Y, and Z. And in a way, going back to like the video I talked about earlier when we opened this talk, the Great Awakening, is I believe there's something much bigger going on, and that people need to know what's possible. They need to see that you know, like your experience, being in a marriage for that long and living in those circumstances, even though you've been able to take massive steps, leaps and bounds, you're still discovering how you've still got those um, strands of the old self that you're having to let go of. And that's what happens. We get rid of the big stuff and it gets more and more subtle, more and more subtle, to the point where you start to realize, there's still this strand to pick out, still that strand to pick out. And not as painful as it would have been on all the other occasions, but you can still have feelings of loss, crying, feeling depressed, feeling worried, because we are also losing our old self. Some, even in the spiritual circles, even talk about it as an ego death, you know, that we are letting go of all of these things that have defined us, who we are as a mother, a father, a kid, a wife, a sister, a brother, you know, what we were in work. One of my biggest shifts that I found really difficult was when I left uh, a job in 2016 that I'd been doing for quite a while, but I'd grown in the company and I had a lot of credibility. I knew a lot of professionals. I'd built up this whole sort of way of working, and I left that and went to an area about 40 miles away. Some people knew me, but I had to like start from the beginning. And that can be really difficult, as well as dropping this aspect of who are you, when actually when you get more Buddhist concepts, it's like, well, who are we really? You know, who do we want to be? And this is where I wanted to take our conversation next, really, is about how do you start thinking about the person that you want to be and what you do want to do. And is there any tools that spring to your mind? Have you thought about, like, you know, who am I becoming, but who do I actually want to be? Who is Susie?
Oh, absolutely. Very well said, by the way.
Thank
It's
you.
always such a joy listening to you. Um, Only recently, I decided to do just that, to sit down and think, who am I? What
Mm,
do I want to do this year? Am I really doing what I want to do work-wise? Am I happy doing what I wanted, doing what I've been doing? You know, there's it saying, what is it? Am I living to work or working to live?
mm,
And it's interesting.
yeah,
So really think about what you're doing and what makes you happy, because energetically, it's all quantum
yeah,
physics. If you're not doing the things that you like, you really do have to make space. You know, I always suggest to people to watch The Secret or listen to
mm,
The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. And I started doing that at the very beginning of January. I refreshed what it is. Like, you know, it used to be called The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. All those really the big speakers and the movers and shakers in our lives that have been there for a long time, that have taught us about manifesting and the power of what how you think can bring things to you.
yeah,
Listen,
yeah.
every morning I'd walk the dog and I'd listen to a couple of chapters of The Secret, just to remind myself
Remind you,
of
yeah.
what used to be called stinking thinking. You know, if you think bad things about yourself, you will bring more things to you. If you think bad things about yourself in a relationship, you'll bring more of the same to you, because your absolute 100% focus
That's
is
where your
on what
focus
you
is.
don't want, and you keep bringing it to you. So really be
Yeah.
careful of your mindset and switch yourself to a positive mindset. What do I really want? And start focusing on those
Mm,
things that you really want. And you used to be really good at pretending when you were a kid. We all were. Make believe was the best thing. If this is what you're doing, make believe what your life is like, you know, and start living it and pretending that you're doing it. I exercise a lot. I like having a fit body. When I'm in aqua aerobics at the pool, I pretend that I'm doing an aqua aerobics class that's on TV. You know, I just pretend that I'm in the environment that I want to be in, or
mm,
I'm doing this because this is my daily life. I'm doing this because I have to stay fit and healthy for the job that I'm in front of the camera. It's put your mind where it is, and the things that you're doing that uh, make it as if, pretend as if it's because you're moving
as
towards what you
if.
want to do, as if it's
Yeah.
already happened. And if you really
Yeah.
do pretend that it's as if it's already happened, then, you know, the law of quantum physics says that your mind will literally believe that it's already here, and it will bring you some more of the same. And I know that might sound a bit woo-woo, but it really does work, because you never know what you're going to receive. Don't dream little, dream big, because the universe
Yeah.
has a lot more in store for you. And when you say yes to these whispers that pop into your head, your life can literally completely change trajectory,
Yeah.
but to the one that you're actually supposed to be on. Both Mel and I have had extraordinary things happen in our life. So we are walking and talking living proof, that how you think is, what you will receive. So me
Yeah.
removing, one carer client and the rest of them have gone, has now, so this
Yeah.
particular phase of my life, January and February, is the month to get ready for what is coming, for what I wish
What's
to
coming
receive.
next?
And I have faith that that's going to happen, that I want. The TV career and the presenting career that I want is on its way. It's already there. If you're into science
Already there.
fiction, and different, views in different kind of time portals, same time, different kind of world. There could be so many worlds of us happening. Which world do you want to be in? Pick the world. That sounds like a lot more fun. And
It's really interesting because this occurred to me when we were talking the other day, what you said about, um, when we let go of things, sometimes we can spend a long time holding on to a job, a relationship, a person, a situation, whatever. And all of a sudden, either the universe constructs that to move out your way, disappear, end, or whatever. And we can be left with this space. And the reaction generally can be, oh, and I used to call it sort of no man's land years ago when I started to have this experience of this has all shifted. Now what? And there's nothing. It's no man's land. Nothing is growing. And you don't realize that actually underneath the surface of the soil that many seeds have been planted, and some of those are going to start to shoot. But the space is really important, whether that's psychological space and taking your time out, have a physical space, being in a nice place, but also the tools then. And as you were talking, and I know I was in over the years an incessant worrier. I've had an overactive mind and imagination, which is one of the reasons I don't watch horror films and things like that. I've had this mind that has caused me more issues than I should have had a lot of the times. And so when anyone's listening, there are only clients that we've worked with where we talk about mindset, and it sounds really easy to go, we get these negative thoughts, we need to think differently, we need to. And I remember, and you said something about when you put the headphones on, and it was a reminder in late 2015, 2016, when my role was coming to an end. It was more to do with an external company coming in that were consultants to sort it out, which actually that was on the face of it. The real reason was they were just doing a massive cult, and I saw what was coming. I saw that our services were all going to be sliced up, and I thought, well, okay, I've been here a while. You can be prepared to some degree, and that's when you start to notice what happens in workplaces or families when there's a big shift taking place. And so the atmosphere got very toxic. There was a lot of toxic management practices going on. There was workplace bullying increased, everything. And I remember getting to this phase, and I can't remember at what point, but I'd been listening to the law of attraction for a while. And I got to this point where while I was getting ready in the morning, I used to get up about 6 in the morning. I was playing law of attraction back to back every minute of while I was getting ready, getting a bath, getting something to eat. It was there all the time. And it was really interesting what I learned about that time, because I started to realize what happens when you play things on repeat, and what happens to previous conditioning and what you start to let go of. So I intensified that at that moment. And one of the messages I give to people around this particular point I'm making, it was a higher level toxic environment and very difficult circumstances to live in. So whether you're in a violent, aggressive, toxic relationship or a toxic environment, I was deploying techniques on a seriously deep level, but I was just about keeping my head above water. I wasn't I wasn't going underwater. I wasn't sort of going into a mental health state, but I was struggling at times with my own experience of what was going on there. So they kept my head above water. And this is the thing when people are in toxic relationships, workplaces, whatever, sometimes you can keep your head above water, but you can only sustain, you can only tread water for so long. And then when I come out of that, what I noticed, I was still playing the same recordings, but also when we've got a negative mindset because of our previous upbringing, because our mindsets are normally sort of set in stone by the age of 5. This said 7. It's probably about the age of 2 actually. The way we think and the way we perceive the world and what the patterns are that are shaped that form all of our experiences after that. One thing I can certainly see when you look back and really reflect on your life is the kind of thought forms you had at the time before you made a major decision. And then you live a life for so many years and you have more thought forms and how they influence every step and decision. So it's almost like this symbiotic dance we do with the universe, that our minds are based on our perceptions are filtered out for our beliefs and values of whatever conditioning we've experienced. So our mind will only receive information that we can receive because all the other door pockets have been closed unless we have a wake-up call experience. And slowly in life, we'll come into contact with people or have experiences that challenge that shift us forward, but we can go into staticness and homeostasis for a number of years. And so it takes a while for some people to realize it's what's going on in their head that can drive them towards craziness and miserableness or towards life satisfaction. But it's also underneath that is how they view themselves, their own self-worth, their own self-value, um, and the messages they've received. So often when we're working with people, you've got to look at all those different levels. But as a starting point, you've got to look at, like, if someone's listening now, is did they even have resistance to some of the things that we were saying? Because if they did, that's usually the starting point. It's like, oh, that doesn't happen because once you allow your mind to expand and go, okay, I've created space now. I've figured out through this plan that I had, and I've tested out all these ideas. I thought, I really love that, and that's not, I really love that, but that's, and you're getting to that place of, let's let that go. Let's create that space for where we are now. Then you can start tapping into the curiosity, wonder, and excitement. And now this is where everything can start to speed up because you don't have all the resistances in place in the mind, in the assumptions, in the beliefs, because you've cleared a lot of those out and you've cleared out enough. But you've got to carry on the work every day consistently, whatever you choose to practice on. And like the tools in your book and the tools that I teach, people can choose 3 to 5 tools. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but it's the consistent practice that then gets the results because you start to get a snowball effect. You start to create new neural pathways, and we know that in the brain research now. And you also start to evolve those new relationships, those new experiences. And all of that is a combination that moves you into areas and works and things. But it's about now your mind, body, and spirit is ready. When you're ready for the real job, the real change, the real significant shift, everything else is a dress rehearsal. Everything else we've learned, every experience we had, can become a dress rehearsal for having the most lovely, abundant, joyful, happy life with only smatterings of moments of feeling anxiety or worry, because I don't know if they ever completely disappear. But I can see you lighting up and connecting with that as I'm talking.
Oh, totally, totally. Especially when you uh generational mindset is something when you said, we're like things that we feel are kind of set in stone. They're not really set in stone, but we
Mm,
have been programmed by our
yeah,
parental units, and they in turn have been programmed by their parents. And we could be
society.
carrying
Yeah.
around old paradigms, just in our immediate family, from that
Oh, yeah.
come from grandma and grandpa, from 150 years ago, that have been passed down. Many
Hmm.
families, they pass down like some serious things. They pass racism down and beliefs, right?
Mm.
They pass things on. I was raised by a narcissist mother, and I really didn't like her, the way she thought about things.
Mm,
Both parents kind of had a lot of really negative ways to look at people. And even when we were driving along, my mother had a thing about different people. This is just an example. And I'm not putting my mother down because she did a great job with me. I am who I am, and I'm very grateful for her, and I've forgiven her for everything. But she was a narcissist, right? So we'd be driving along, and she didn't like fat people. But this was her thing. And she would be always, as a child, there would be derogatory remarks made about anybody who is fat walking on the side of the road. This is the sort of
wow.
indoctrination
Mm,
and programming that we get. Look at that person, don't they look whatever? And as a child, I would always look at them and think, but they're out exercising, so that's got to be a positive thing. And I realized quite earlier on that my mother had ways of looking at life that made me feel anxious, that didn't sit
mm,
well with me. Sometimes we are so programmed by our parental units, by their feelings, that it takes a little while to realize, what do we think? When I was 21, I had the best thing happen to me. This lady who lived up the road from my parents, after a disastrous 21st that my parents gave me, that was awful. She took me out, she invited me out to have a cup of tea, and she sat me down. I'd never met her before. She said to me, I've got to tell you something. She said, there is something seriously wrong with your parents, and there is
mm.
nothing wrong with you. And it was the
Wow.
biggest and best, most powerful thing that anybody had ever told me, because up until the age of 21, I really felt there was something wrong with me, because that's how I'd
Mm,
been programmed to believe, right? This is something like it's really indoctrinated in us from children. So sometimes it's, you really have to dig deep to think about, what do I think? This is how I'm feeling about this situation, but I'm going to stop myself. What do I really feel?
yeah.
Like a lighter example is following a sports team that's passed on from
Mm.
grandfather to father to father, and you've got to follow this particular team, and this, you've got to be,
We all
you,
support that. Yeah.
this is our team. You have to follow this team. You have to follow this sport. And then you get there and you think, but I don't like football. I don't like this team. I want to follow another team. But if I dare say
Yeah.
this, my family are going to excommunicate me from the home. They're going to be so
Yeah.
ashamed of
Yeah.
me that they're not going to talk to me, because they feel really strongly. So I have to go along with their thought patterns and their feelings so as not to upset them. This is some of the powerful indoctrinations that we're given from the family units. And this is where being really brave and trusting your instincts and being able to be vocal, even if it's